Mirduszka omni bolishnia, Mirlo aramsni, proč pivno. Proč pivno. Šmetna, 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 šmetna. Du, do der bjutski dotski Marla. Ah, Marla is bjutski dotski perč. Da, masa pagsa roksa. Oh, pivno, ivno, mamska. Ay, schmotka. There don't you hoppany skippany through the woods. Meme? Hoppany skippany through the woods? No, 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 mamska. Hoppany skippany, hoppany skippany, hoppany skippany through the woods. Mimskivai, on the other side in their forest, Mirdushka, omskivai. Brajni, 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 brajni. He's ugly and nasty, omskivar, and this little children run skiing hiding in the woods. Oh, omskivar is in the woods, omskivar is in the woods. Oh. Oh, oh, poor little Papno, obscurodni, oh, brajni, brajni. Hm? Oh? Oh, Putski Dotski. Brajni, brajni. Hoppany skippany, hoppany skippany, brajni, hoppany skippany, hoppany, brajni, hoppany skippany, yeah! Oh, 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 oh! Irlo, mirlo, mumski meme. Eveno, piveno, pumpski pim. Butski, dotski. Thank you, das is the Enski. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you very much for allowing me that couple of minutes. That comes from a wonderful play called The Foreigner by Larry Hsu. Appropriate for today's conversation around crossing cultural borders and internationalization. I'm just going to start with what I call slide number 1. I'm trying to keep things simple in my life, so I thought start with slide number 1. I'll get back to that a little bit later. So my talk is titled Internationalization from Awareness to Promotion. In my role at College of the Rockies, I actively promote and encourage internationalization and believe in it a lot. And so I'm going to take you through a series of stories in my life. And in fact, even before awareness, I would like to talk first about what I call pre-awareness, which is sort of that innocent phase that we have growing up where you don't have all of the stereotypes and prejudices and awareness even of different cultures and it's simple acceptance. And so I'm going to tell you a story from about grade 2 or 3 about Renu Varshni. You can see she cares about me a lot in this picture. When I was thinking back to being younger about when I first became aware of different cultures, I thought, well, I didn't really have anyone in my life that was that I could consider coming from a different culture or that was really different in my mind. I grew up in Brandon, Manitoba, which is a fairly homogenous city, small city in Manitoba. And then I realized, wait a minute, Renu Varshni was in my class, and looked a little bit different than the Jessica Johnsons and the Ian Smiths that were mostly in my school. But the interesting thing was that I had never thought of her as anything different. Her parents had immigrated from India. She'd been born in Canada, so she didn't have an accent, but she certainly had darker skin. But I didn't have any of that awareness at the time. She was just a girl in my class. In the best possible sense of the word, she was just a girl. She was just another student. As we go along in life and become aware of these things, I think we start to build up these barriers sometimes, and often wish we could go back to that stage where we simply accept people for who they are, regardless of where they came from or what their religious or cultural background might be. Let's go on to my number 2 slide. I'll come back to that again a little bit later. To awareness. One of the first moments I could remember being aware of having different culture, language, people around me was when my parents took my brother and I down to Florida. It's not a beating story, I promise. I'm not going to use the stick to hit anybody. But we went to Disney World and went on the rides and things. But one of the things that really stood out for me was my brother and I became friends with these 2 boys at the hotel we were staying at. And they spoke Spanish. We didn't know it was Spanish at the time. We just knew that it wasn't English. And they couldn't understand a word that we said, and we couldn't understand a word that they said. But it didn't matter. It was just 4 boys who became friends and played. And I remember really strongly one time when, we'd been playing for a while, but we had to go in and have supper or something, and we wanted to come out and play again after. We're trying to, my brother and I are saying, well, how are we going to figure out a time? And they were probably saying the same thing in Spanish about how are we going to meet up again. And so I remember we drew a clock in the dirt on the ground, and then made the hour hand and the minute hand, and there were a lot of yes, 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 or si, 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 and we could come out and meet again. And so it was this wonderful moment of complete nonverbal communication, and that language barrier didn't matter at all. It was a great moment. Moving on from there. No good talk about crossing cultural borders or internationalization would be complete without at least one good story about miscommunication. I think we've all had moments of miscommunication within our own first language, let alone when it comes to another language. So I took French immersion from grade 4, and then after grade 8, I went with my French immersion teacher, invited me to go to his parents' farm in a small village outside of Montreal. And so we drove there one summer, and it was really a new culture. I mean, as most of us know now, you don't even have to necessarily leave your own community to experience some form of internationalization, and certainly not within the borders of your own country. Going to Quebec was completely different. Going from a city to a farm, going from being surrounded by English language to French language, and it was an amazing experience for me, real eye-opener. And I remember shortly after I arrived and doing all the regular farm chores, feeding the chickens and baling hay and things. And we went to this fair, sort of a small country fair. And I'd heard about this thing called poutine. And I think most people are familiar with poutine now, but at that time it really wasn't that well known outside of Quebec. But I'd heard that it was good and I had to try it. And so the family encouraged me to go and order it myself to practice my French. And so I was really nervous because I hadn't really done a lot of interacting other than with this teacher and family that I knew. And so I wanted to keep it really, really simple. And so I went up to the booth to this, the mature woman behind the booth who was probably 16. I was 13 or 14. And, I didn't want to seem like the dumb kid who couldn't speak French. So I said as best I could, Je veux un poutine, s'il vous plaît. Poutine. I said poutine, and it was $2.25. She gave me kind of a little bit of a weird look, and then she said, "C'est pas cher pour $2.25." It's not very expensive for $2.25, and I thought it was a bit of a weird thing to say, but whatever. And so she came back and gave it to me, and she said very clearly, "Voici ta poutine." Poutine. So I went back, and I was all proud. I'd ordered this thing on my own, and I got it, and I paid my money, I made a transaction, I'd interacted in another language. And I was telling the family about this, how I'd ordered this poutine, and they sort of turned red a little bit, and then in a very kind way told me that the word I had used is very similar to a word that means prostitute in French. So I had asked for a prostitute, which is why the cheeky girl had said, "That's not very much for $2.25. But there's no better learning experience than when you make mistakes like that, because I will never again mispronunciate poutine, guaranteed. From there, going on to the promotion. And I've had a lot of chances for traveling to different countries and interacting with different cultures and people since then. And I've really come to appreciate the benefits that come from that. And so I'm very happy to be in the role that I'm in, where I can take advantage of that and really promote it through my work. When I was first asked to come and do a talk about this, I did what I think a lot of people do, and I looked up on Wikipedia what the heck internationalization was. It's a very broad term, obviously. And so it said, in economics, what? In economics, internationalization is the process of, and I said, economics? I don't know anything about economics. I can't talk about economics. And in the same line, it went on to say, but there is no accepted definition of internationalization. And I kind of went like, whew, well, that's good. Then I can talk about anything, which is more or less what I'm doing anyway. Now, at College of the Rockies, we have defined internationalization for what it means for us as an educational institution. At COTR, internationalization is defined as the process of integrating an international, intercultural, and global dimension into all teaching, outreach, research, and service functions of College of the Rockies. It's a pretty heavy definition. That's why I prefer to talk about it than read about it or how it looks on the screen. Now, one interesting thing that some of you may have picked up on is there's no mention whatsoever about students or international students. And I think a lot of people have this notion that when it comes to educational institutions, whether it's high school, college, or university, that internationalization means you have students from other countries at your institution. You have international students. That's certainly an aspect of internationalization, but it's much, much broader than that. So I'll go on. Internationalization at COTR involves recruiting and integrating international students. So there's the student part. Leading development assistance partnerships, supporting students and employees to work, study, and consult outside of Canada, to engage our community in global citizenship, and enhancing program content to include a diverse and competitive global labor market. So I think I wanted to make the point that for us as a college, and I know for Selkirk College the same, that internationalization involves a lot more than just having international students on your campus. Through partnerships that we have with institutions abroad, we are able to provide opportunities for our staff and students to travel abroad. We've had students that have gone on 3-4 week and longer opportunities to interact with students at other universities, for example, in Ecuador, where they get their travel paid for and they're able to work on projects. Staff, and not only staff, but also community members. For example, there's a doctor in Kimberley who had an opportunity to work on a project we have ongoing in Kenya right now. And so from those opportunities, they get brought back into our community, and their experiences are shared. And for faculty that go, those experiences are shared with their classes. And for the students they go, they share it with their friends. And so it's a much broader dimension than the simplicity of what you might initially think it is. I may as well throw a sport in there, just for the heck of it. Why not? We're talking about internationalization. So I wanted to tell you a quick story about the time when I was living in Japan for a couple of years, and got to speak Japanese somewhat, not perfect, but not too bad. So at some time in my second year, it was getting a little bit better. And one of the interesting things was I lived in a community that did not have a lot of foreign people. And Japan is a fairly homogenous society. If you don't look Japanese, there's a good chance that you are a foreigner. And the word for foreigner in Japan is gaijin. And for those little kids that I talked about that don't have those barriers yet, they're not afraid to point out that you are a foreigner. And so you get these cute little kids wearing their school uniforms and their backpacks that are as big as their whole body, and then they would see you, and then they would point, and they would say, gaijin! Gaijin, like, oh my God, and not in a negative way at all. It was just I can't believe, look at that, there's a foreigner right here in front of us. It's amazing. And I never took offense to it because they're not doing it to be mean in any way. They're excited about it, actually. And so usually I would wave back and I would say hello in English, and they would repeat back hello and be amazed that they just had a conversation in English with a foreigner. But this one time, I was driving my little car. I had this little Suzuki Rex that I drove around to explore some of the villages, and I was going through this really small town, and there were two boys playing basketball, probably 6, 7, 8 years old. and they saw me. They saw the white face in the car. You know, I rolled down my window and I was driving my little car and I saw them. And, you know, the eyes opened wide and the mouth dropped low on these two boys, you know, and the basketball dropped, right? Tum, 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 tum. And then sure enough, up came the hand. Gaijin! Oh my gosh, look, there's a foreigner right here in our community. And instead of doing my normal, my normal thing of just saying hi and smiling and stuff, I had a very serious face. You know, I looked at them and I said, "Gaijin janayo, Nihonjin da yo." And I drove off. I rolled up my window and drove off. And their mouths dropped lower. And what I had said was, "I am not a foreigner. I am Japanese." and I wish I could go back and find those two boys and see if they remember that experience as much as I do. And I hope it had some sort of a positive effect in terms of internationalization or making them think a little bit about different peoples, different cultures. And I really hope I didn't, scar them for life, which is a possibility. So I'd just like to go back to the simplicity of my slides, my slide number 1 and slide number 2. And logically, the next slide would be, gotcha. All. And so I'd just like to end by saying, in terms of internationalization for me, and thinking about people in the world, and part of it comes back to that initial trip to Quebec, where on the way home, my teacher asked me, was there any big surprise, that you have? Was there anything different? You're going to this different culture, you have preconceived notions maybe about what you're going to expect. And I thought about it, and I said, the one thing that surprised me or that I hadn't expected was that other than things like, yes, I ate more tourtière, I ate more sugar pie, the language obviously was different, but people weren't really different at all. And that hasn't changed in the countries I've traveled to around the world. Certainly there's differences in terms of economic prosperity and poverty and things, but the basics don't change. And so I've kept that with me from that first experience where people they want family, they want a roof over their heads, they want to be happy, they want to have friends and love and be loved. And that doesn't change, and that's always stayed with me. And I think it starts with one, and that's with everyone, with each of us in the room. And number 2, the person that is beside you or that you're talking to or interacting with or walking down, passing on the street, and whether you ignore them or you give them a smile, it's amazing how much of a difference that can make. And so I think, that affects the all. And I think the more that we can do that, when it comes to crossing cultural borders, if we think of borders sometimes as barriers, that we can slowly help break those barriers down and maybe even end up stepping backwards a bit and going back to that pre-awareness where we first think about the person as just another person and not about whatever kind of baggage we might associate with their color or religion or anything like that. So I'll stop there. I'm almost out of time. Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.